Okay, so here I am, creepy shadow man. Let me turn on the light here so I don't look so creepy. I may still be creepy, but I at least won't look as creepy. I'm out here now uploading videos. I want to get inside soon though because I'm cold. I gotta get the new propane tank connected to the heater. I took the old propane tank out that was empty. Got some work done around the big tent there over in the woods across from the house. That belongs to my friend who has allowed me to camp here on his family's property. And he uses it for storage. And a tree fell through it and just took the tarp. Oh, it just basically took the tarp out, And then over the course of the winter, of course, what was left of the tarp deteriorated too. So we're going to have to tarp it up again. But I'm getting it ready now for that to be done. I got the tree off it, and I'm clearing out the area around it now, and I'm in the process of removing the old tarp that's no good anymore, and just getting everything stabilized basically so we can just tarp it up when we get a big tarp for it. Rocky's inside. I have to go in and hang out with him for a while too, and I'm looking forward to that. I like to spend time with my Rocky. And it's funny, I was sitting here and I was thinking of a story. My cousin Alan, who I grew up with, I was born in July of 1968, and July 1st, 1968, and my cousin Alan was born in October of 68, so we were very close in age. We're only a few months apart. And I spent a lot of time with him when we were growing up. Anyway, he was kind of a rough character, my cousin Alan, and he got involved with a lot of stuff that wasn't so great. He got into addictions big time: alcohol, tobacco, drugs, anything at all that would just, I suppose, take the pain away for a while. That's what he would do. And he came up real rough anyway. He did. He didn't have an easy time of it. And my grandparents were raising him off and on, but it wasn't until he was a teenager that they got him full time. And by that time, it was really pretty much too late to turn things around. He was already addicted to different things, and it was too bad anyway. One time when we were kids, we'd only be about 6 or 7 years old, I guess. Alan disappeared. He was at our grandparents' house and he disappeared. A bunch of us were there, and myself and some of the cousins that were there, and a few of my half-sisters that were there. We started going around the neighborhood looking for him. Anyway, my oldest sister found him in a neighbor's garage, unconscious. They had a can of gas in there for the lawnmower, and he'd gotten in there and was huffing the gasoline, and he had passed out. So this goes back to an early age. He just seemed to be cursed with a predisposition to addiction. Anyway, he took the hanging around at a place downtown, and it was, well, my dad called it a den of iniquity, is what he called it. Yeah, downtown in Perth. The lady who had the place, her name was Viola Charlebois. And Viola Charlebois ran this den of iniquity, anyway, as my dad would say. And it was basically a drug den, and he hung out there with his friends, and they did dope, and there were different things went on there. Some of them pretty awful, really. Some of them pretty disgusting. And I'm not going to get into any great details about it, other than to say that it wasn't a very good place for a young man to be hanging around. This was back in the early 1980s. Anyway, the police were after my grandparents all the time to keep him out of there, but they told them they weren't allowed to really do anything to keep him out of there. And so my grandparents were pretty frustrated by that, And I remember my dad, my dad wasn't somebody to mess around with. He was over to see my grandparents, who were his parents, and my grandma was pretty concerned Alan had been over there at Mrs. Charlebois' place, and, she knew that's where he was. She didn't want him there. She was concerned about it. So my dad, without saying a word to her, he left, and he went up to Mrs. Charlebois' door, and he banged on the door, and some guy answered it, and my dad asked for Alan, said he was there to take Alan home, and the guy basically said, "Who the F are you? And what business do you have coming around here?" Like that. And without saying a word, my dad was a man of few words. He didn't talk like I do, you know. He didn't use a lot of words like I do. He was a man of action. And usually that action would be violent, you know, especially if you gave him an attitude like that. Well, what did he do? He just booted the door, knocked the guy back against the wall, because, of course, the door hit the guy and knocked him back. And he went in there, and he told Alan. Alan was sitting there. Anyway, he told Alan, he said, "It's time to come home." Alan didn't want to come home. And my dad, he said, "I didn't ask you if you wanted to come home." He said, "I told you it's time to come home." He said, "This is not a debatable thing," you know, like that. He said, "You are going home." And he said, "You're either going home under your own power or you're going home on the toe of my boot." But he said, "You are going home." Anyway, Alan knew not to mess around with my dad. So he left voluntarily, and my dad took him back to my grandparents' place. And my dad got into a little bit of trouble over that. The police paid my dad a visit because I guess the people there called the police on him. Because he had basically broke into the apartment and assaulted somebody and threatened, to assault another person if they didn't leave there with him. But anyway, these were the same police that were telling my grandparents that they had to keep him out of there. But then we're telling them there was nothing they could do to keep him out of there. So, pretty frustrating situation anyway. But I remember my grandmother was pretty quick with the one-liners. There was this one time she was talking to him about all this time he was spending at Viola Charlebois' place, and she told him that she didn't approve of him being there, that it was a bad spot, and, he just had no business being there, basically, and she didn't want him to be there. And he basically told her that he'd go and do whatever he wanted to do, and what was she going to do about it anyway? And she just looked at him and she said, "Well, you spend enough time there." She said, "Why don't you just move your bed there?" That's what she said. She said, "You spend enough time there. Why don't you just move your bed there?" I remember that. Oh, there's the howling. That's the coyotes. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up or not, but that's the coyotes. Every so often you hear that. Anyway, that's the story anyway. My cousin Alan lived to be in his mid-40s, and he died anyway. Just living that kind of a rough life caught up to him, and he died, But he's like 45 years old when he died. So, but yeah. Anyway, it was a good day. Got some things done. Ran through some transmission fluid going into town and back. The truck's leaking pretty bad. I'm hoping they call me soon to let me know that part's in, so I can come in and get it installed and stop all this nonsense with leaking transmission lines. Anyway, that's it. I guess now I've made another video, and I'm going to have to upload it before I go in. So I'm going to stop now, because the shorter the video, the less time it'll take to upload. All right. Good night.